Stress appears in life as an unwelcome visitor, yet it is not an enemy. It arrives to teach, not to punish. When the mind labels stress as something wrong, something to escape, suffering is born. But when stress is seen clearly, without judgment, it becomes a guide pointing toward growth and awakening. Consider how the body reacts when pressure arises. The heart tightens, the breath becomes shallow, the thoughts rush forward like a frightened crowd. This reaction is not wisdom, it is habit. For many years the mind has learned to resist discomfort. Resistance creates tension, and tension turns simple difficulty into deep suffering. Stress itself is often neutral. It is the story told about it that causes pain. In Buddhist practice, we do not ask how to eliminate stress. We ask how to meet it. When stress is observed calmly, it reveals where the mind clings. It shows attachment to comfort, control, certainty, and approval. Without stress, these attachments remain hidden like dust beneath a rug. Stress lifts the rug. A tree grows strong not by avoiding wind but by bending with it. In the same way, the mind grows resilient by meeting pressure without collapse or aggression. When stress arises, there is an opportunity to pause. In that pause, awareness can replace reaction. Awareness is already free, even when the body feels tight. Stress becomes a teacher when it is allowed to speak. It asks, "What are you holding on to?" It asks, "What are you afraid to lose?" It asks, "Who do you believe you must be in this moment?" These questions do not need answers formed in words. They need presence. By turning towards stress instead of away from it, the mind begins to awaken. What once felt threatening becomes revealing. What once felt heavy becomes instructive. In this way, stress stops being a burden and starts becoming a path. Before pain fully arrives, the mind often suffers in advance. This is because the mind moves faster than reality. When stress appears, the body feels a sensation, but the mind immediately creates a future. It imagines loss, failure, judgment, or regret. These imagined outcomes are then treated as truth, and suffering multiplies. The mind is skilled at storytelling. A single moment of pressure becomes a long narrative about what might go wrong. This narrative feels real, even though it has not yet happened. In Buddhist understanding, this is where much suffering is born. Not from what is occurring now, but from what the mind insists will occur later. Observe carefully and you will see that stress often comes in two layers. The first layer is direct experience, a tight chest, a fast breath, a demanding situation. The second layer is resistance and fear. This second layer says, "I cannot handle this," or "this should not be happening." It is this inner argument with reality that deepens suffering. The mind creates suffering because it believes control is safety. When control is threatened, fear arises. Yet life is not something that can be fully controlled. Stress appears when this truth is forgotten. The mind fights impermanence, wanting guarantees in a world that offers none. Awakening begins when this pattern is seen clearly. The moment the mind recognizes that it is adding suffering, space appears. In that space there is freedom. Pain may still exist, but unnecessary suffering loosens its grip. When stress arises, gently ask where the suffering truly comes from. Is it from this moment, or from a thought about another moment that has not arrived? Seeing this distinction is not intellectual, it is experiential. When seen directly, the mind softens, and stress loses its power to dominate awareness. Many people believe stress and pressure are the same, yet they are not. Pressure is a natural part of living. It arises from responsibility, effort, and change. Stress is what happens when the mind resists that pressure. Pressure belongs to the world. Stress is created inside. When lifting a heavy object, the weight is pressure. If the body aligns correctly, the weight can be carried. If the body tenses and fights the weight, pain follows. In the same way, life places weight upon the mind. When the mind braces itself with fear and resistance, stress is born. Inner resistance often sounds quiet but persistent. It whispers, "This should be easier," or "I should be somewhere else," or "I am not enough for this moment." These thoughts harden the mind. They narrow awareness until the moment feels unbearable, even when the situation itself has not changed. Pressure does not ask the mind to suffer. It only asks the mind to respond. Stress appears when the mind demands comfort, certainty, or immediate relief. In Buddhist practice, the task is not to remove pressure, but to soften resistance. When resistance softens, pressure becomes workable. Notice moments when stress dissolves without the situation improving. This happens when acceptance replaces struggle. Acceptance does not mean liking what is happening. It means allowing what is already here to be here. In that allowance, energy returns. Awakening grows when the mind learns to stay open under pressure. Instead of shrinking, it expands. Instead of tightening, it relaxes. Pressure remains, but the suffering around it fades. This is the freedom discovered not by changing life, but by changing how the mind meets life. Discomfort is unavoidable, yet the mind rarely knows how to stay with it. When discomfort appears, the habit is to distract, suppress, or escape. This habit strengthens fear. The mind learns that discomfort is dangerous, something that must be avoided. In this way, stress grows stronger each time it is resisted. To sit calmly in discomfort does not require force. It requires honesty. The body may feel tight, restless, or heavy. The breath may feel uneven. Thoughts may protest. Calmness does not mean these experiences disappear. Calmness means they are allowed to exist without being pushed away. When discomfort is met with still awareness, it begins to change on its own. Sensations move, soften, or shift location. Thoughts rise and fall. The mind discovers that discomfort is not fixed. It is alive and impermanent. Fear loses its authority when this truth is seen directly. There is great power in staying present with what is difficult. In that presence, the mind stops fighting shadows. Energy that was used for resistance becomes available for clarity. This is not endurance born of willpower. It is patience born of understanding. Stress often demands immediate action, yet wisdom begins with stillness. When the mind pauses instead of reacting, it learns that it is larger than the discomfort it feels. The discomfort is experienced within awareness, but awareness itself is not disturbed. By sitting calmly in the middle of discomfort, the mind trains itself in freedom. It learns that peace is not found by avoiding difficulty, but by meeting it fully. In this meeting, discomfort becomes a doorway rather than a barrier. Stress deepens when the mind clings. Attachment turns a passing difficulty into lasting suffering. The mind does not suffer simply because something is hard. It suffers because it demands that things be a certain way. When reality refuses to obey, tension tightens. Attachment often hides behind reasonable desires. Wanting success, harmony, or security appears harmless. Yet when the mind believes these things must exist for peace to be possible, stress takes root. The fear of losing what is desired or not gaining it at all becomes a constant pressure. Observe how stress increases when the mind says, "I cannot be okay unless this works out." This thought binds peace to conditions. In Buddhist understanding, this is the source of suffering. Peace is postponed, always placed in the future, always dependent on outcomes beyond control. Letting go does not mean becoming careless or indifferent. It means releasing the demand that life follow a fixed script. Effort can still be made, responsibility can still be honored. What is released is the inner grip that insists on certainty and reward. When attachment loosens, stress softens. The mind becomes flexible, like bamboo in the wind. Events still happen, challenges still arise, but the heart no longer collapses under their weight. Awakening grows in the space created by non-clinging. In that space there is room to breathe, to see clearly, to respond wisely. Stress loses its sharp edge when the mind stops gripping what cannot be guaranteed. When emotions surge, the breath is often the first thing to change. It becomes shallow, fast, or held without awareness. The body prepares for danger even when the danger exists only in thought. By returning attention to the breath, the mind is guided back to the present moment where clarity lives. Mindful breathing is not a technique to control emotion. It is an invitation to witness it. When the breath is observed gently, without forcing it to be calm, the body begins to settle naturally. This settling is a response to safety felt in awareness. As attention rests on the breath, emotional turbulence reveals its true nature. Feelings rise like waves, peak and dissolve. When the mind follows the breath, it stops chasing these waves. It remains anchored, while movement continues around it. The breath also teaches patience. Each inhale arrives on its own. Each exhale leaves without effort. In this rhythm, the mind learns trust. It learns that it does not need to manage everything to remain steady. Stress often convinces the mind that it must solve the problem immediately. Mindful breathing interrupts this urgency. It creates a pause in which wisdom can appear. In that pause, reactions lose their force. Through simple awareness of breathing, emotional turmoil becomes workable. It is no longer an enemy to defeat, but a passing experience to observe. In this observation, the mind reclaims its balance and remembers its natural calm. Stress has a way of exposing the beliefs the mind lives by without question. When life is smooth, these beliefs remain hidden. When pressure arrives, they are revealed. In this way, stress functions like a mirror, showing the illusions that quietly shape behavior and identity. One common illusion is the belief in a fixed self. Under stress, the mind says, "This is happening to me," and a solid identity forms around fear, failure, or inadequacy. Yet when observed closely, this self is only a collection of thoughts, memories, and reactions. It appears strong, but it is built from passing elements. Another illusion is permanence. Stress feels urgent because the mind believes the current difficulty will last forever. This belief tightens the heart. When impermanence is remembered, stress loosens. Everything that arises also changes. Nothing stays fixed, no matter how convincing it feels in the moment. Stress also exposes the illusion of control. The mind believes it must manage every outcome to remain safe. When life refuses to comply, anxiety appears. Seeing this illusion clearly brings humility. It allows the mind to relax its grip and respond instead of command. These illusions dissolve not through argument, but through observation. When stress arises, awareness can watch how beliefs form and collapse. In this watching, wisdom grows quietly. As illusions fall away, stress loses its authority. What remains is a mind that sees clearly, no longer ruled by stories it once believed without question. Daily life offers countless small struggles that often go unnoticed. Waiting, being misunderstood, making mistakes, feeling tired. These moments are usually seen as obstacles to peace, yet they are the very places where awakening can occur when met with awareness. Awakening is not reserved for silence or retreat. It appears in ordinary situations when the mind stops resisting what is happening. A delayed response, a critical word, an unexpected change can all become teachers. They reveal where impatience, pride, or fear still live. When a struggle arises, the mind has a choice. It can contract and complain, or it can open and observe. Observation does not remove difficulty, but it transforms the relationship to it. The struggle becomes an experience within awareness rather than an attack on the self. Each time awareness is chosen over reaction, a small awakening occurs. The mind sees clearly for a moment. It is no longer lost in habit. These moments accumulate, quietly reshaping how life is lived. Stress often signals that awakening is nearby. It marks the edge where old patterns are being challenged. When that edge is met with presence, growth happens naturally. In this way, daily struggles stop being interruptions. They become invitations. They guide the mind back to the present, where freedom is always available. Daily life offers countless small struggles that often go unnoticed. Waiting, being misunderstood, making mistakes, feeling tired. These moments are usually seen as obstacles to peace, yet they are the very places where awakening can occur when met with awareness. Awakening is not reserved for silence or retreat. It appears in ordinary situations when the mind stops resisting what is happening. A delayed response, a critical word, an unexpected change can all become teachers. They reveal where impatience, pride, or fear still live. When a struggle arises, the mind has a choice. It can contract and complain, or it can open and observe. Observation does not remove difficulty, but it transforms the relationship to it. The struggle becomes an experience within awareness rather than an attack on the self. Each time awareness is chosen over reaction, a small awakening occurs. The mind sees clearly for a moment. It is no longer lost in habit. These moments accumulate, quietly reshaping how life is lived. Stress often signals that awakening is nearby. It marks the edge where old patterns are being challenged. When that edge is met with presence, growth happens naturally. In this way, daily struggles stop being interruptions. They become invitations. They guide the mind back to the present where freedom is always available. Letting go is often misunderstood as withdrawal or passivity. The mind fears that without clinging, life will fall apart. Yet letting go does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means releasing the inner struggle while continuing to act with care and clarity. Stress arises when the mind confuses responsibility with control. Responsibility asks for sincere effort in the present moment. Control demands a specific outcome. When outcomes are clung to, anxiety follows. When effort is offered without attachment, the heart remains steady. There is wisdom in doing what can be done, and then stopping. Beyond that point, worry adds nothing. It only drains energy and clouds perception. Letting go begins when the mind recognizes the boundary between action and obsession. This does not mean avoiding difficult conversations or decisions. It means entering them without the weight of fear and self-protection. When the mind is not defending an identity or outcome, it listens more deeply and responds more skillfully. True letting go creates space. In that space, compassion and insight can function together. The mind becomes light, yet grounded. It moves forward without being dragged by anxiety. By releasing the need to control results, stress loosens its grip. Life continues to ask for effort, but the heart no longer trembles under the demand. This is the freedom found in letting go without escaping life. Living without fear of stress does not mean life becomes easy. Difficulties continue to arise. The difference is in how the mind meets them. When fear is absent, challenges become opportunities for awareness rather than triggers for suffering. The awakened mind recognizes that stress is not personal. It does not target the self. It is a signal, a teacher, a mirror reflecting attachment, expectation, and illusion. When this is seen clearly, tension softens and the heart opens. Each moment of stress is temporary, passing like clouds across the sky. Awareness, like the sky itself, remains vast and unobstructed. Even when emotions rise or situations shift, the mind knows its own stability is not dependent on external conditions. Life invites growth constantly. Stress is part of this invitation. By approaching it with calmness, observation, and acceptance, the mind transforms challenge into awakening. What once felt heavy becomes light. What once felt threatening becomes instructive. A life lived in this way does not avoid difficulty. It meets it fully with courage, patience, and clarity. In this meeting, the mind becomes strong yet supple, aware yet peaceful, resilient yet gentle. Ultimately, the path of awakening is the path of turning stress into growth. Every moment of pressure carries the potential for insight. Every challenge contains a lesson. When the mind learns to flow with stress instead of resisting it, freedom is found, not elsewhere but here in the present moment. Stress is not an enemy, but a teacher. Throughout life, it arrives to show where the mind clings, resists, or fears. When we meet stress with awareness instead of reaction, it transforms from a burden into an opportunity for growth and awakening. Pressure is part of life, but suffering is often self-created. By observing thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations without judgment, the mind discovers its natural calm. Daily struggles, discomfort, and challenges are not interruptions. They are invitations to practice patience, presence, and clarity. To bring this teaching into your own life, begin with small steps. Notice when tension arises and pause. Take a few mindful breaths, observing them without trying to change anything. Reflect on the thoughts that amplify stress. Are they demands, attachments, or fears of control? Practice letting go of the need for certain outcomes while still acting responsibly. Turn ordinary challenges into opportunities for awareness, asking yourself what each moment of stress can teach. Over time, you will notice the mind becoming more flexible, resilient, and peaceful, even amidst life's pressures. If this message resonated with you, share it with others who may benefit from seeing stress as a guide rather than an enemy. Leave a comment below sharing your experiences with stress and growth. And if you want more teachings like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can continue walking the path of awareness and calm together.